It gives me great pleasure to introduce Coach McKeefery. He has many accolades. He's been in the strength and conditioning world a little over 15 years, has extensive coaching tree. A lot of his people have gone on to do big things as well. Currently, Coach McKeefery is the assistant strength and conditioning coach at the Cincinati Bengals, has been awarded by the Professional Football Strength and Conditioning Society the Under Armour Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year, and a sought-after industry speaker. He's worked in various different types of educational offerings for Stack Magazine, for Football Monthly. He's been the strength and conditioning coach at the University of South Florida. Also, he is the associate athletic director there as well. In the college ranks, he was the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Tennessee, and he's worked with over 20 NFL draft picks, most namely one that is one of my favorites because, as I say it, I'm a Giants fan, and JPP is one of the guys that I really liked, and I met Coach McKeefery at the University of South Florida and quite some time ago, and we had the opportunity of visiting his facility and seeing JPP train. And I have to honestly say that Coach McKeefery is a stand-up gentleman, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I appreciate it, man. No, it's hard to sit through all that, actually. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime. I hope that besides this event, we can do a follow up, and maybe if you were to do something specific on before. Well, you're going to be probably caught up in the NFL season, but I definitely would love to have you on again if you had a moment. Other things here before I want to encourage everyone that's listening to this on iTunes is to go ahead and jump onto Coach McKeefery's websites. He has two of them. If you're interested in becoming a strength and conditioning coach, I've actually done this product. It's the strengthcoachbasictraining.com. Great. Basically, it is the building blocks in getting to into the strength and conditioning world, and getting an understanding of what it's going to take, what education you're going to need, how to present yourself professionally. He does a really great job. Comes with many handouts, many tips, a lot of video tutorials. And then he also has another website, McKeefery.com, and there's a couple of great products there as well. Mostly my conversations with people are about success, and about how they've gotten to be successful. And there's certain questions that are kind of standard through all my interviews. So I'd like to start off with the first one is, when you hear peak performance, what do you think that means?
Well, I mean, obviously I think it's hard to define it without using the word, but, competing or performing at an elite level relative to your genetic potential. I think that's there's such a discrepancy there with athletes. There's so many as an athlete. I played college ball at a small NAIA school, and so by no means genetically was I gifted as Jason Pierre-Paul, like you mentioned, not even in the same realm. Well, but there was opportunities in my career where I operated at my peak level of performance, and I think that's for many of us as coaches. We're not all going to get the opportunity to work with those types of athletes, so it's our responsibility to get optimal performance for our athletes training or performing at their highest levels. So going out and doing the best job you can each and every opportunity you get.
So when you brought up the difference in more about genetic predisposition. So is it fair to say that athletes are born, not made?
Well, I think there's a genetic ceiling for every athlete. I mean, obviously, the good Lord above blessed certain athletes with a higher propensity of fast-twitch muscle fibers so that they're able to perform at those sports that require tremendous power and speed. And there's obviously ones that have a high propensity for slow-twitch muscle fibers that are great endurance athletes. And then there's the rest of us that are somewhere in between that try to maximize what we've been given in each of those areas, and so you can definitely train an athlete to be better, no doubt about it. I always use the example, how does Usain Bolt have a speed coach? I mean, the guy's one of the fastest guys in the world, and he has a team of coaches around him now. So I definitely think that to a certain degree athletes are born, but then to reach their potential, they need to have coaches around them.
What team gave you your learning in your path? Because what was the biggest influence in how to do your job? What books did you read? what trainer, what coach, who influenced you the most to be able to do your job today?
Well, the list is long and extensive. Very blessed to have some great teachers in my career, and I'd say one of the biggest teachers, obviously, is experience, and practical experience. Because just like I tell our staff, as strength coaches, you're never really truly a strength coach until you're a head strength coach, or you're running a facility, or you're running a program. Because you just don't deal with all the challenges outside of the X's and O's of strength and conditioning. It's easy to go, in a one-on-one setting and have distractions so you get an athlete better. It's not rocket science. But when you got 100 athletes and academics and coaches and social life and all those things pulling at them, that's when you have to be, when it's a challenge. But I started my career. I had coaches growing up that had a tremendous influence on my life as an athlete, led me into coaching. Bill Sobey was a high school coach that, with a father not around, that it kind of took on kind of a mentoring role, and it had a big impact on my life. Chris Creighton, the college coach that I had my senior season, we went from a 1-9 season to a 9-1 with essentially the same players, and just taught me the value and the psychology of the athlete, and creating a culture and an environment. To early coaches that mentored me in strength and conditioning were Maxie, who's the director of strength and conditioning for Major League Baseball. Mark Hasanovich was the first boss I had for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That such a phenomenal teacher, and really showed me the value of investing back into coaches and to place an emphasis on their education. And obviously the coaches that I've worked for, I was very blessed to get opportunities pretty quick in this field. That was a testament to me going out and really trying to learn from others' mistakes, and so there's a ton of coaches that I shadowed. There's a ton of coaches that I called, this is, 15, 16 years ago, but it was really before internet, email, or even really email. I was writing letters and going to visit, following people up and picking their brain and trying to identify things that were their stumbling blocks. Obviously, all the books, the social strength and conditioning and Mampa's periodization book, and how to burn Gambetta stuff, and Mike Clark and Greg Cook and Mike Boyle, and a lot of those things that were out there at the time. And so I value my one of my, I think, my strongest traits is that I'm never satisfied, and I never stop learning. I'm on vacation here until training camp, and I've got several books that I'm bouncing back and forth between, and online programs and different things that I'm always striving to challenge myself. As I started practical experience, there's just nothing that compares to getting in and having to work with athletes and understand them and get them to buy into you. And all those things contribute to having success in the profession.
So you brought up a lot of good information and pointers there that I hope everyone gets. And the one thing that I see is a common thing in one of the other people that we've interviewed is that leaders are great readers. And I know because of you, and you also have a podcast that you do on your website, McKeefery.com, that because of you, I actually went out and got Cal Dietz's triphasic training book, which I thought was a great book as well. It's interesting for me to see the common thread that you're a life learner, you're very humble, you don't you've worked with many different people. What are some of the biggest differences that you see between the college athletes that you've trained and now currently when you're working in your professional ranks? You've had previous experience, with the WFL and the NFL already. What do you feel is the biggest difference in the NFL compared to a college athlete?
Well, I get this question a lot, actually, and I think there's probably more similarities than there are differences, to be honest with you. All these athletes, they still want to be pushed. They still want to be challenged. They still want, they're improving, that they have all the same, maybe at a grander level, in terms of social challenges and, learning and academic challenges and all those things. So I think there's a ton of similarities. I would say that the the biggest difference between the professional athlete and maybe some collegiate athlete is that they're a more educated consumer, and they've had more years experience. Again, there's that word, that they understand their body a little bit better, and they understand things that work for them and things that don't. You combine that with the rigors of competition and the toll it takes on their body. There's more things that they're not able to perform because of limitations or injuries or things along those lines. So it really comes down to, and it's one of the fun things about working in the professional ranks is really challenging yourself as a coach to accomplish same logical demands that are required for the athlete to improve in those areas that are needed for their sport in different ways. So if an athlete is coming off an ACL, you can't always squat that at. And you may get back to a point to where squatting on a certain percentage, but Vinny Markosanovich had a great line that he would always use when I worked with the Bucks. It wasn't how much, it was how little to get the same result. And so finding ways to accomplish that, those demands, a way for them to be able to still perform it with those challenges and improve. So I would say that would be my answers, if they're just more educated, and there's quite a bit of a difference between working with a rookie where they're 21, 22, 23 years old versus the 10, 13-year vet that's maybe 35, 36 years old. And so those are the things that are challenges, but they're also the things that make the job fun.
So taking a step back, obviously you're working with many different types of people. What are your type of workouts? What do you do for your own health and well-being?
For me personally, you're saying?
Yes.
The thing that has been a blessing for me going back to the NFL is that I do have a little bit more time, especially going back as an assistant. This is the first time I've been an assistant in close to 15 years. And so all those challenges that I mentioned earlier from a program point, a lot of that burden's been lifted. So I'm able to get back at it a lot more than I have in the past. But I still try to make my workouts brief and intense. Use a lot of elements, like a lot of what Dan John does, where he focuses on, 5 foundations of movement, a push, a press, a pull, a carry or a drag, a squat, and a hinge. And so I kind of rotate between those 5 as far as an emphasis, kind of taking kind of a beer system type of approach to it, where I kind of have a max effort out of those areas each day. Also one of his famous lines is that it's just important you do it every day. And so those 5 things are things that I work in, whether it's body weight in my warm-up to some sort of max effort load to some kind of a dynamic load. But, I'll work all 5 of those areas in. And then I've used a lot of CrossFit principles and integrated conditioning, the intensity and the conditioning effect of CrossFit into my workouts. And so there's a balance there. I wouldn't say by any means my loading or my periodization model is a CrossFit type of deal, but when I go through it at as fast of a pace as I possibly can, I would say there's some similarities there.
There's a massive amount of information out there, and people get influenced all the time. What would you tell someone about? Would you make the statement of saying, hey, give an opportunity to different modalities? Are you an advocate like that, or are you more a traditional type of guy? Or because I already kind of know the answer on this one. I know you're more of a hybrid
Right.
coach, where you're an open-minded. You will use different applications. What do you feel? Because there's a lot of disruption going on in the industry. What are your comments on it? How do you feel that people should be thinking about that when they hear about, you bring up CrossFit out there, and CrossFit is a massive disruption, and people have preconceived notions. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, one of the things that will kill you in this profession, in my opinion, is being closed-minded. If you're a young coach, or if you're even a veteran coach, where very philosophy-based, in this industry, when you're hired and fired by people that don't truly understand your role or your profession, or the physiology behind it, you're going to have limitations. And so if somebody, if you're very much a powerlifting philosophy-based coach, and all of a sudden the coach comes out and says you can't squat anymore, you got 2 choices. You can walk out the door and off principle and just say it's what I do, but I got a family of 4 at home, and a wife and 4 kids. So I'm not going to do that. Or you can adapt your philosophies and and try to accomplish it a different way. And so I was something early on in my career. I grew up down the street from Esteban Dvorak lacrosse, and so I grew up an Olympic weightlifter. And then, going to Mark Sonovich with high intensity, not the pure one set to failure, but very close and very dialed into high intensity principles and time and attention principles. It was the polar opposite of that. And so, but going through both workouts left me puffing and puffing, challenged, and all those things. And so it really exposed me to open myself up to different ideas and concepts. If you ever heard me speak, you've always heard me say I'm a principle-based strength coach, not a philosophy-based strength coach. When you're philosophy-based, when you're conjugate or tier system or Undolian periodization or linear periodization or Olympic weightlifting, CrossFit, then you pigeonhole yourself into some boundaries, and you have problems kind of expanding outside of that if you're the purist in those philosophies. But when I talk overload principle or progression, I can go and I can talk to Louis Simmons or Mike Boyle or Gray Cook or Cincinati or Tommy Moffitt, or I can walk into any gym in the world and talk overload. When we adopted our kids from the Ukraine, I went to Olympic Training Center and through an interpreter talked overload, some Olympic weightlifting coaches. And so you base your program on principles. What that allows you to do is to look at different types of training modalities and training principles and implements and those types of things and say, okay, where does that fit into what I believe principally will make an athlete better? And so when I remember when battle ropes came out, and I sat there and said, okay, this is ridiculous, but it looks cool. And then I started like, oh, okay, how can I overload the athlete with a battle rope? How can I progress? How can I train in a balanced development format? How can I perform that rep in a safe environment or safely for the athlete? And when I was able to check all those principles off, I was like, this is a tool that I can use. So now I've been home for one of the nice things about the NFL is that I had a 3-week vacation here, and instead of wanting to go to the local gym here, I started putting a little gym in my garage, and battle rope was one of the first things I went out and bought. So I think when you base your program on principles and you allow yourself to not be closed-minded, I think it opens a whole new world to you as a strength coach.
No, I think that's really you kind of answered one of my questions already ahead of time, which was, specific methods of training and the principle-based method. I fully agree with it. I've heard you present that, and I think it's such a no-brainer. I think philosophically there's way too many arguments that people make and are too passionate. It's almost, I've often referred to it as we're going into a religious setting, and you have various different types of religious orders, and at the end of the day, it's the same goal. It should be about making the person better, and principle-based is better than philosophy-based, because then what ends up happening is people have arguments, and there's no winner there. It should be about the end result, and I think that you've done a great job in communicating that.
Well, one other thing, if I may, Marcelo, is it takes me back to, we had a clinic when I was at the Bucks, and very high intensity based type of clinic. There's a powerlifter that had come, and halfway through the clinic, he got so mad, so frustrated, so animated that he had to leave because he was so frustrated with what he was hearing, I guess, and it stuck with me. But I remember thinking, as this guy is storming out of the facility, that the guy's probably got 100+ football players, that he trains, and out of those 100+ football players, there's a good percentage that would benefit from that type of training. So, my point is that it's not always about us. Just because we maybe understand this philosophy a little bit better, or that's what we know, or what we think maybe there's enough programs that have had success with various different philosophies to where athletes learn and train and improve in different ways. And our number one responsibility is to provide the best program for each individual athlete. So that's not, again, it goes back to another great thing about the NFL is that you're forced to do that. You're forced to, kind of adapt your programs to these individual athletes because, one, they're multi-million-dollar athletes, so they can show you the door a little bit, maybe, but also it's that their bodies have adapted to a certain type of training or they've had success with different modalities or those philosophies or whatever you want to say, and you have to adapt as a coach.
That's common sense. I think that, you would like to think it's common sense. I should say that. Some people are still very philosophical and are not so open-minded, but I think at the end of the day, those are people that don't have a long career and don't really survive. They have to adapt to the times. And you brought up some really good points and some interesting pieces of technology that you've been using. Are there any specific technologies, any additional ones besides like the battling ropes that you've been playing with that you feel is good stuff to share?
I think I've always challenged myself throughout my career to always throw the sugar in. And I say that in a way because athletes, one of the things I said early on was that you have to get them to buy into you and that you're improving them. And sometimes, when you're dealing with, young athletes, they're going to be motivated by the bells and whistles before they're motivated by the meat and potatoes. And so, the barbell and plates haven't changed in over 100 years. That's your meat and your potatoes. So you're able to accomplish so much with that. But you have to throw technology in, so whether or not it's heart rate monitors or HRV or apps or different types of blood testing or whatever you want to throw out there, those are all tools to kind of help you get more information, which is critical, but also to throw the sugar in so that the athletes feel like you're on the cutting edge and you're researching training methods that are going to help them improve, and obviously, a lot of that stuff's been created for a reason, because it is a better way of getting some of that information. But the problem with that a lot of times is it leads to abandonment of the meat and potatoes for the, whatever the latest flavor is. So that's where as strength coaches, and you go back to being a principle-based strength coach, is finding ways to integrate that stuff in, but not at the expense of volume and intensity and manipulating those variables.
No, that makes complete sense because my experience is always paralysis by analysis sometimes, and it demotivates the athlete. So you have to, and also, going back to a point that you made about having buy-in from the administration or from the direct overseer of the team or of the organization, it has to complement, it has to be sustainable, and it has to be meaningful. It can't just be bling with no meaning. And originally when we met, it was through me working with a heart rate monitor manufacturer, and you were implementing a scoring system, a tracking system with them, and can you maybe share a little bit about your experience with that? Did you feel that was meaningful? Did you feel like that was a good thing for you to implement? Because I know that you made reference to not keeping principle-based. Do you feel that was something that was helpful, or do you feel like there's pros and cons?
There's definitely pros and cons. I mean, anytime you start to introduce too many things, like you said, paralysis by analysis or more time, and that's the hardest part. Strength coaches, our time demands are so we're so involved that it requires quite a bit of time with those athletes, and so anytime you add more to that, it's taking time away from your family and those types of things, but I think it's important to have information. A lot of times because it's we live in a CYA type of society, and so It's no more. It's not good enough anymore just to say, yeah, well, they're in shape. You got to be able to back that up with some information. But if you're able to show, their training load at week 1 versus their training load at week 8 with the same amount of work and significant improvement, then you're taking the subjective commentary out, and you're providing some quantitative data to back up your findings. And then, that's in kind of a CYA type of environment, but then you arm yourself with information, to be able to provide athletes with more information, so like HRV. Bottom line, a college athlete, their HRV is going to be ridiculous because what are they doing? They're eating junk. They're staying up late. They're going out drinking or doing whatever on the weekend. They're stressed from academics. They're stressed from social life. They're stressed athletically. They're wrecking their body, but because they're young, they're able to adapt, But if you have some information to show them, hey, look, here's some quantitative data to support when you feel better than when and what things were you doing to feel better, or these are things that are really having a detriment to your performance, then you're arming the athlete with more information and hopefully making improvements in those other 22 hours. I tell our athletes all the time, they got we got them for 2 hours, but they got 22 other hours to mess up everything we did. So if we're arming them with information to support training, hopefully we're not fighting an uphill battle when they walk back in.
So this leads me perfectly into the next question, which is, do you research or read any research? Because it kind of goes hand in hand. Sometimes people want to know, well, how is this documented? Let me see that. I imagine you do ongoing research, but when I say research, I also mean you obviously, it sounds like, and I know you do, practical research, the objective feedback that you're getting in and out of season and off season, but do you take the time out to get the peer-reviewed journals or to get any other information?
Yeah, sure I do. I make it a habit to read through the abstracts of all the journal of strength conditioning research and on and on and on. I would say I read the abstract and then I go into depth on the ones that are more pressing to me at the time. The challenge I have with a lot of the research that's done is it's academic or it's done in clinical settings or those types of things. It's one of my challenges to myself and my peers is, as strength coaches and, as a profession in general, we want so much to have a stronger organization, stronger say, stronger, more respect, all those types of things. But yet, because of the time demands of our job, we're the first ones to not want to speak, to not want to do research, to put ourselves out there. And, and so we all have a responsibility to start to produce more practically applied, athletically based research and studies and data so that we can improve. To answer your question, I definitely read research, but I'll be honest with you, more things that have an influence on me are more practically based.
I agree with you. I think an evidence-based, well-rounded approach is the best way to go, where there is a practical intake of information along with some peer-reviewed, because you said it right there, which is it's a lab experience. It's not necessarily the real world all the time, so those variables are not the same. So it brings a lot of challenges all the time. It's important to know it, but at the same time, it has to be specific.
One other thing that I'm here to, and this is just standard operating procedure for me, is everything that's in our program, I go back and I find research to support. We'll design the program is always, a combination of books and articles and research and things that I've read. Then I'll go back and I'll find the supporting documentation for things that are in our program specifically. And that's part of my problem with research, is that I can always find something to support what I want, or I can always find something to support against things that I do. So, again, in that CYA type of environment, I always make sure that I go back and find things to support what we're doing.
I could respect that statement. How do you relax? What do you do to get away from everything? I know you got a family of four, and I've noticed that recently you've taken a hiking trip, or what do you do to just relax and let go?
Well, almost everything revolves around my kids, and that's for me, especially right now, is we're living apart. Until we can get our house sold and all those types of things, everything. I mean, there's not. My wife always jokes that I have no hobbies. I would agree with her on that. But I'm finding different things. I mean, obviously training, that's a relaxing time for me, and that's kind of me time. Where I'm able to think and meditate, for lack of a better word, on those types of things. I enjoy the outdoors, hiking and rafting and doing those types of things, and I'll always make sure that my wife always calls me Disneyland Dad because, as soon as I'm home, I'm taking them and doing something with them. Then I enjoy various different things. I like shooting, taking guns out and target shooting and things along those lines. I like a buddy of mine and I just built a 3-in-1 plow box, and I could get into woodworking if I knew what the heck I was doing, stuff like that. I mean, I would say a hobby of mine is learning new things. I really enjoy that. And then, I think something that I've really taken a liking to recently, because, it's in the strength and conditioning world, everything you read and things along those lines, I mean, there's a good chance that you've read it before, you've come across the information before, things like that. Internet, business, marketing, things along those lines. But that's stuff that's all new to me, and so everything that I read is new information to me. And so I enjoy learning about blogging and social media marketing and things like that. Those are all things that are new to me and challenging, and so I like to push myself, and I spend a lot of free time thinking about that.
I think since I've met you, I know that it shows exactly like your labor of love there when it comes to that world there. I mean, for me, what I think is your strength coaching website is, for me, it pretty much indicates that. It's the strengthcoachbasictraining.com that you put together. It really lays out the steps for you going into this industry and into this line of work. What are some things for you in this coming year? Are there any specific speaking events that you're doing? Are there any highlights that you want to share with the group?
There's always a ton of things going on. The hard part for me is that a lot of it's scheduling-wise is dictated on season and all those types of things. So I tend to wait till after the season to see A, if I still have a job, and B, what our schedule is going to be before I book a lot of things. I would say, going back to what you had mentioned, with my website and strength coach basic training and things like that, it's so easy to get caught up in this, this internet marketing world and these fitness gurus and things along those lines, where it's such a challenge to try to do it the right way. And you've known me for a long time, and you know that everything I do is from the heart, and those things. I started on McKeefery.com because I just wanted a place to express some opinions. So that's really what it came to. Then I did Strength Coach Basic Training, which was essentially I had I had an internship program that's been very successful, and we were capping what we could take, and so instead of having to turn away a lot of coaches from an internship experience, I just filmed what we did, the lectures that we did, and the assignments that we gave, and all those types of things, and I put it online for others to be able to do it from a distance. This year, in fact, in a week here, so I don't know when this is going to post, but on the 15th of July, releasing another product called Strength on Demand, www.strength-on-demand.com. And what that is it's an online strength and conditioning clinic presentation archive So we release a different presentation every week, 52 weeks in the year. It's the industry leaders, it's Greg Cook and Kazkazadi and Artos Remedios and, tons of great strength coaches that have spoken at either mine or Rob Taylor's clinics. And so we took those presentations and we put them online so that you can access it from your phone, your iPad, whatever, and view those presentations. It's one of the things that we're sitting around and we're sitting going, these are some great clinics, great presentations, but people, it's limited to the 40, 50 people that are at that clinic, and so this is a way to repurpose that content, but also get it out to the masses. And so, again, all these things stem from a desire to want to help young coaches and strength coaches around the country. And I've been on a mission, I spoke at the national clinic a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago, whatever it was, and I had, all the coaches stand up and asked them to sit down. There's 400 plus people in the room, and sit down if they couldn't name more than 5 coaches that are retired being the strength coaches, and pretty much the whole room sat down, and so, I've been on a mission to try to find a way to make this field a field that we can retire in, that there's longevity in, and that you have tools and resources and ways to save money and those types of things. So, that's where that all stems from. And, I started Iron Game Shop Talk, which is a web show that's, you can get through on my website, where I interview industry leaders on various topics. And, again, it stemmed from, I was jobless for a while there, and, I was traveling all over the country because I wanted to get out and learn, and it started getting expensive. So it led to with some other options. And so Skype came about, and so I'm sitting there Skyping some coaches, and one of my assistants came over, and we're talking to a coach that we both knew. And we get off, and he's like, you need to start taping those things. That's a ton of information. So I started taping them, going up on my website. And, it's led to a pretty good little following of that show, and getting some good speakers and getting some good ideas out there. So tons of things there. I don't mean to ramble, but it was, all those things are things that I try to do to make our profession better, along with speaking. We have I speak typically 6 to 10 times a year around the country, and put on 2 football strong clinics this last year. One in Detroit and one in Baltimore. We're going to put on 4 to 5 next year, where it's 3 college strength coaches, one talking about in-season, one talking about off-season, one talking about summer, and then an NFL strength coach talking about philosophy. So, again, it's for the high school coach that wants to see how they can improve their program annually, so they can come in with their program and see what they're doing in season versus what the University of Michigan is doing, versus see what in summer what Temple University is doing, and compare it, and then come back the following year and see new speakers in those areas. So those are a lot of things, plus the whatever else I can think of in the next year.
No, it's quite impressive. This should, if everything goes according to plan, this will probably air next week, so I will share this with you. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule, especially now with the upcoming mini camps coming. And I would I would love to definitely maybe go down to Cincinnati, pop my head in there, and just say hello and see how you're doing. And again, thanks for taking the time out. I look forward to following up maybe in the future if time permitting. I know in the season is probably it's not going to happen, but I truly want to thank you for taking your time. I know that you've been in a world of transition. I look forward to that new product, Strength on Demand. I definitely will take the time out to do a blog post and repost this event with that. I think that, going forward, what we will do, if you're available, I would love to have you back, do a touch topic like program design for football. Our goal is really to find industry leaders in all these categories, from business to strength and conditioning, very similar to what you're doing, but the standards of questions are more about kind of doing a biography of the individual and really talking to the commonality of all these successful people.
It's great. Anytime, as a coach, as a fitness professional, you take the time to give back to other coaches. I think that's very noble, and I appreciate you doing that and inviting me on. And, obviously if there's anything I can do to help, I'm happy to do it. You know that. So thanks a lot, Marcel.
No, thank you. I learn every day, and every time I speak to you or any of the coaches that I've met in my lifetime, it's amazing. It's really amazing what you guys do, and this is a pleasure for me. Like I said, this is definitely my Monday highlight here, man. So thanks for your time, and I look forward to following up with you. And
good, buddy. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. And good luck this season. I'll keep my eyes open.